Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate the AC method with a few of the homework problems from homework 6. So this is from homework 6, and the questions are listed, and what we're going to do is I'm going to illustrate the AC method for factoring. Now, it's called the AC method because this number is sometimes called A, and then this number is C, right? You have a quadratic, it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This is a quadratic equation in standard form. This is A, I'll make it lowercase a, and this is lowercase c. Now, what's the method? The method is, the method is you take A and C and you multiply them together. So you take this number and multiply it with -3, and you pull that number to the side. In this case, it's a -6. Now what you do is you look at the number b, which in this case is -1, the middle term. And you ask yourself, what two numbers multiply to -6 but add to -1? So if we take our time, right, we want to think, multiplies to -6. Well, -6 and +1, right? 6 and -1, these all multiply to -6. But when I add them together, right, these I get -5, and here I get +5. So these two are no good. But what else multiplies to -6? Well, 3 and -2, right? But when I add these together, I get +1. So that's no good. But that means you're close. That means you just got to switch the sign. So -3 and +2, these two multiply to -6. So that's good. And then they add to -1. And this is the combination you want. You want -3 and +2. And what that tells you is how to split this middle term here. So now you rewrite the quadratic, 2x squared minus 3x. And you could have put plus 1x. That's the -3. And then plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. And now what you're going to do is now you're going to factor by grouping. So now you got to switch your technique a little bit around. You got to factor by grouping. So you got to do factor these and then this. And if there's nothing to factor, that's okay. But let's look at these two together. Is there anything that the 2 and the -3 share other than 1? No. So you could just take out the 1 if you need be, but you don't need to put times 1, right? And then what about the x squared and the x? Well, they both share an x, so you could factor out that x. And then you're left with, here, the 2 stays 2. X squared divided by x is just x minus 3. Plus, here, in this one, now you're done factoring these two together, right? Now you group these two together. And in this one, this is the only time where you factor out a 1, right? There's nothing that these two terms have in common as a factor, so you factor out that 1, and you're left with a 2x minus 3 on the inside. All of this equals 0. And now you have to look at this. This is really, right, if I remove that x, because that x looks, if I remove that 1, because that 1 looks ugly, the x, 2x minus 3, plus 1, 2x minus 3, equals 0. If I look, okay, you deliberately want this to be the same as this, because you can factor it out. If you call it a z, if you're not sure, you could look at it as x times z plus 1 times z equals 0. And again, this whole thing is like z, okay? And you could factor out the z, you're left with z times x plus 1 equals 0. But what was z? Z is 2x minus 3. So it's 2x minus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0. And that allows you to solve it, because now you have it that it's 2x minus 3 is one factor. You set that equal to 0. And then x plus 1 is another factor. You set that one equal to 0. And then you solve each one for x. So now you have x is going to equal, in this one, when you add 3 on both sides and then divide by 2, you're going to get 3 over 2, or x equals -1 from this one. And then you're done. Now, again, let's go through 10. Okay, same process. You want to do this. This will work when the coefficient is 1. This process, you could do 1 times that and split the middle term, and it will work for when this is 1. But you have to do this if this term is not 1. You could guess and check. That's another method. You could guess and check on how to factor it, but this is without guessing and checking. So what do? Again, you do 6 times the -4, and you get -24. You pull that out to the side. So this is homework 6, -24. You pull it out to the side, right? And then now you look, you think to yourself, multiplies to -24, but adds to that middle number, -5. So what multiplies to -24? Well, if you're not sure, take your time. 1 and -24. -1 and +24, right? 2 and 12, right? What else? -2 and then, you know, obviously the reverse, right? +12, -2. Then keep going. What about 3? Does 3 go in? Yeah, 3 goes in. 3 and -8, right? Does that work? Yeah. If you look at this point, right, all the other ones do not sum to -5. But 3 plus -8 is -5. So that means I found my numbers. These are the numbers. They multiply to -24. That's good. That's one criteria. The next criteria is that they need to add to -5. And all these two numbers do are they tell me how I want to split that middle term. They tell me how I want to split this middle term. So now I got 6x squared stays the same. But -5x now becomes plus 3x minus 8x minus 4. And it would not have mattered if I switched these two. I would have gotten the same result, but in a slightly different way if I switch these two. So it doesn't matter which one you put first, but I'll put it this way, and it shouldn't matter. Your next step is to factor by grouping. So you got to sit here and you got to go, okay, let's group these two together and then these two together. What's the GCF between 6 and 3? 3. What's the GCF between x squared and x? X. That comes out on the outside. Divide each term by 3x. 6 by 3 is 2. X squared by x is x. 3x by 3x is 1. Now, in this next group, right, in this group over here, you have that the leading one is negative, meaning you want to factor it so it's negative. And what's the GCF between 8 and 4? 4. So the 4 comes out. There's only an x here. There's no x there. You can't take out any x's. 4 is all that comes out. And what do you get when you divide in? You're going to get 2x plus 1. Be careful to factor it correctly. Look, if I divide these by -4, right? What's the negative divided by a negative? Positive 2. And then what's the negative divided by a negative? Positive 1. So now it looks like this, and this is all equal to 0. I'm going to rewrite it so it's clear. Minus 4 times 2x plus 1 equals 0. And again, this is the same as this, and that means that I'm on a good track. I factor that out to the front, 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 4 equals 0. And if you're not sure how I did that, again, just look and just kind of come up with a dummy variable, right? Call this z, this whole thing, and see how it is that if you factor this is the z right here, and you'll be left with that. Now you set each factor to 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. And 3x minus 4 equals 0 gives me, when I minus 1 on both sides here, 2x equals -1. X equals, when I divide by 2, -1/2. And that's one solution. Or I add 4 on both sides. 3x equals 4. I divide by 3 on both sides. I get x equals 4/3. And these are my two solutions for this original quadratic equation. And then lastly, I'm going to do this one fast. 5 times -12 to start. That's -60. All right? -60, I got to find something that's going to add to 28. 6 and 10, right, is no good. I'm going to try what multiplies to negative 60 other than that. So what else do I need? I need it to be 28. So then what else? 8? Does 8 go into 60? No, 4 does. 10 does, but now I'm going backwards. I want it to be positive 28. Oh, okay. So then, yeah, so in 4 and what? 4 and 15 negative. And then that will give me 28. This is a 5. This is number 11. Make sure I'm doing this right. Negative 12. 5, 50, and then 60. I got negative 60. Okay, that's fine. So then now let's see. What else? 3 and 20. Right? 3 and 20. And then what else? 2 and 30. 2 and 30 do it. Okay. So then now look, I tried a few different things real quick, but 2 and 30 are what I need. Because look, if I make it negative 2 times 30 is negative 60, yes? And then negative 2 plus 30 is 28. So I have how to split this. So I got 5x squared minus 2x plus 30x's minus 12 is equal to 0. And then I factor these two together. I can only factor out an x, 5x minus 2. Plus here, what's the GCF between these two? You got to be careful. It's 6. And I get 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. The 5x minus 2 comes to the front. And I get the x plus 6 left over in the other factor equals 0. 5x minus 2 equals 0, or x plus 6 equals 0. This linear term, gives me x equals 2/5. And then this one gives me x equals negative 6. And I'm done. And I solved these quadratics. This is the AC method. It's also known as the bridge method. Okay? Go through this procedure a few times with a few different problems.